She was running, not from a stranger, but from someone she had kissed, lived with, and trusted. This is True Crime Chronicles. Here we review to you what is going on within our community. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe. Let's go into the matter. At 6:59 a.m., on an ordinary sidewalk in Brooklyn, her bare feet hit the pavement. She didn't have time to grab shoes or scream. Behind her was Gabriel Sanchez, her boyfriend, her killer. The night before, he told someone, "I don't trust her anymore." Less than 8 hours later, that mistrust ended in murder. Caught on a doorbell camera. One shot to the back. A body dropped to the concrete. And then, silence. What happened next was over in seconds. One more shot. To his own head. A murder-suicide. Broad daylight. In front of homes. Families. Strangers. But this wasn't about sudden rage. This wasn't a one-time argument gone wrong. What the camera captured was only the final page of a story that had been writing itself for years. A story with signs ignored. A violent past hidden behind charm. A woman who tried to leave. And a man who made sure she couldn't. What brought Selena Ramos to that moment, barefoot, terrified, alone, wasn't just mistrust. It was fear. It was a history she may have known pieces of, but not all. Because Gabriel had secrets, and the justice system had already failed to stop him more than once. But the most terrifying part? It wasn't just that he pulled the trigger. It's that no one stopped him before he did. Her name was Selena Ramos, 32 years old, a Bronx native, a mother, a sister, a friend. She worked hard, kept her circle close, and just months before her death, she was trying to start over. His name was Gabriel de Jesus Sanchez, 41, the man she loved, the man she lived with, the man who would become her killer. On the morning of February 11th, 2025, just after sunrise, on Jefferson Avenue in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn, a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera captured what no one should ever see. Selena is seen running across the sidewalk. Behind her, Gabriel walks, arms steady, gun in hand. She falls. He fires. Within seconds, he turns the weapon on himself. And 2 lives are gone. By 7 a.m., police were taping off the sidewalk. By 8 a.m., the footage had gone viral. But by then, it was already too late. To the public, it looked like another domestic tragedy. But the reality was far worse. Because Gabriel had a record. Selena had been scared. And someone had known. She had a bright future. He had a violent past. This is the story of how control, mistrust, and hidden rage led to a murder caught on camera. This sets the emotional tone and lays the groundwork for the chronological story arc. Selena Ramos was a private person. Quiet, hardworking, determined. Holding down a day job in Brooklyn and quietly building a life she could be proud of. She wasn't perfect, but she had goals. Friends remember her for gentle strength, always smiling even during late shifts or long hours. Gabriel de Jesus Sanchez, 41, had a different story. Records show 9 prior arrests. In 2017, one fine line was crossed when he sent explicit photos to a minor. His name appeared in court documents, yet never fully reached the public eye. In private, their relationship showed cracks. Neighbors overheard loud fights late at night. One recalled, they'd argue late at night sometimes. But no one expected this. Gabriel's temper had moments. Selena pushed back. He watched her phone. He questioned every text. She joked with co-workers. He demanded to know who. To the outside world, they were a couple. But inside, trust was already broken. February 11th, 2025, 6:50 a.m., another fight inside their apartment. Words rose. The argument overwhelmed her. Selena grabbed her coat and ran. 7 a.m., barefoot, she raced down Jefferson Avenue. Police later confirmed it. She was trying to get away fast. Gabriel followed, a .38 caliber revolver in his hand. The lens of the Ring camera captured all. Her fall, then the flash of the shot. He didn't just strike once. After she dropped, he raised the gun to his own head. Neighbors reported hearing 2 loud pops and then silence. At 7:30 a.m., the NYPD arrived to a scene no one could unsee. 2 bodies, blood on concrete, Horror in broad daylight. Detectives worked quickly. Gabriel's revolver lay beside him. No note. No plea. No explanations. The ring footage time-stamped everything. It became the piece no lawyer could defend. Friends told police the fights had gotten worse. Whispered reports emerged. Police had been called before, though no public records show domestic calls. The investigation didn't unearth a confession, but brutal facts remained. Selena ran, and he shot her in the back. No defense of self was possible. No remorse. Only two final statements, marked forever in silenced echoes. Gabriel Sanchez, 41, legally a stranger to many, quiet, unassuming. To Selena, someone controlling, jealous. He once stalked and threatened an ex over a year before the murder. His past contained hints. Legal arrests, social media fixation, unchecked obsession. But to her, he said just enough to keep her near. He said he loved her, but only on his terms. When she tried to set boundaries, it broke him. If I can't have you, no one can. That intention, final and unforgiving, became reality. It happened in less than 10 seconds. The footage, captured by a silent doorbell camera, will become the final record of Selena Ramos' life. At exactly 7 o'clock and 8 seconds a.m., the lens clicks on. You see her first, barefoot, coat barely clinging to her shoulders. She's running. Fast. Not toward anyone, just away. Then, Gabriel Sanchez appears in the frame. Clutching a revolver. He doesn't call out. He doesn't yell her name. There is no hesitation. One shot. She falls forward, her body slumping into the sidewalk. The frame stutters. A blur. Then stillness. For a second, he just stands there, looking down at her. And then, without a word, he lifts the gun again and fires. There were no final words. No epalegi. Just silence and death. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of confusion. It was cold, intentional, and final. This was a murder-suicide. Evidence at the scene, including doorbell footage, confirms the female victim was attempting to flee. The suspect pursued her with a firearm and discharged one round into her back before taking his own life. He didn't chase her to talk. He didn't want answers. He didn't need closure. He chased her to end her. And just like that, whatever future Selena had built, every plan, every day she tried to push through was gone. She ran barefoot into the morning, trying to escape the man who once said he loved her. To the world, it looked like another domestic dispute turned deadly. But what many didn't see was that this wasn't a sudden snap. This ending had been building. The evidence was there. It always is. The question is, why didn't anyone stop it? The gunshot echoed down Jefferson Avenue, but the silence afterward was even louder. There were no press conferences, no heartfelt tributes from the family, no televisita funeral. Selena Ramos was gone, and those who knew her stayed quiet. Her family never made a major public statement, maybe out of grief, maybe out of disbelief, or maybe because no words could describe the horror of watching someone you love trust the wrong person until it was too late. She ran for her life, and he made sure no one could save her. The community was shaken, not just because of what happened, but because it was preventable. Gabriel Sanchez had a history. He wasn't a stranger to law enforcement. He had been arrested 9 times. In 2017, police charged him with sending explicit material to a minor. He was known to be controlling, possessive, volatile, and yet he was free to walk the streets, free to buy a gun, free to get close to someone like Selena. There was no court order in place, no official protective filing, and no system that caught him before he pulled the trigger. This wasn't just one couple's tragedy. It was part of something larger, something systemic. Every year, thousands of women report warning signs, threats, harassment, obsession, and yet too often, it ends like this: a memorial on the sidewalk, and a community asking why. In the U.S., more than 1 in 3 women experience intimate partner violence. Every day, on average, 3 women are murdered by a current or former partner. If you or someone you know is in danger, please call the National Domestic Violence. Help is available. You're not alone. Selena never got the chance to ask for help. Or maybe she did, and no one listened loud enough. Her story shouldn't be forgotten, not just because of how she died, but because of what it tells us about who we fail to protect. What if someone had called earlier? What if a neighbor had spoken up about the screaming at night? What if Gabriel had been held accountable for his past arrests, especially the ones that showed clear patterns of control and manipulation? What if the system had flagged the signs before it was too late? And what if Selena had gotten away just seconds faster? But there were no second chances, no reset button, only a sidewalk, stained with the final moments of a woman who trusted the wrong person, and a man who couldn't stand to let her go. Was justice ever really possible in this case? Or was it already too late? If you or someone you know is in a dangerous relationship, don't wait. Trust your instincts. Speak up. Document everything. Call someone. You might not get another chance. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think this could have been prevented? Was this a failure of the system? Or something deeper? Let us know in the comments. Let your voice be heard. White heavy checkmark subscribe to Crime Chronicle for more real stories behind the headlines. Bell hit the bell so you never miss a case. L, in memory of Selena Ramos, 1992 to 2025. May her story not be forgotten.
Chicago rapper who goes by Young QC was reportedly doted on by his mother, Yolanda Holmes. Decided to have his mother killed to get his hands on her insurance policy.
She was sleeping when it happened, a pillow beneath her head, the television still flickering. Her front door was unlocked, just like he told the man it would be. He knew exactly where she'd be, which bedroom, which side of the bed. One shot was enough to kill her, but he pulled the trigger again, just to be sure. The man who ordered her death wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a jealous lover. He wasn't after money from the register or something in the safe. He was her son, her only child, the same boy she raised alone for over 2 decades. The same boy she celebrated birthdays with, cooked for, prayed for, defended. The one she called her king. His name was Calmaine Wilson. Online, he went by Young QC. He called himself a rapper, an entertainer, a rising star. But the reality was far more ordinary. A stalled music career, a small following, and a growing resentment that what he thought he deserved never came fast enough. He could have worked harder. He could have walked away. But instead, he made a choice. He chose money over blood, attention over loyalty, and death over patience. This wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned, deliberate, cold. After the hit, he emptied her bank accounts, bought flashy clothes, threw money in the air on social media. Then he posted a tribute to her online like the rest of them. He cried at her funeral, said he missed her smile. But behind that grief was a secret. Behind that hug to her friends was a lie. Behind that calm voice was the man who put the plan in motion. What turns a son into a killer? What leads a 23-year-old to orchestrate his mother's murder while pretending to mourn her? This is not just a story of crime. This is the story of a betrayal so personal, so calculated. It shattered a family and left a city stunned. In the heart of Chicago, inside a quiet third-floor apartment on Montrose Avenue, a woman was murdered in her sleep. There was no break-in, no forced entry, no signs of struggle, just a body, a phone, and a single mother who wouldn't wake up. Her name was Yolanda Holmes, 45 years old, known for her bright smile, her loyalty, and the way she made people feel like family. She owned a successful salon. She raised her son by herself, and she worked every single day to give him the life she never had. To neighbors, Yolanda was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays. To clients, she was more than a stylist, she was a friend. To her son, she was everything. The community mourned her like family. Her friends wept in disbelief. Her son cried on television, begged for justice, and said he would do anything to find out who did this. But the deeper detectives looked, the more things stopped adding up. The phone records, the money trail, the behavior. What started as a tragedy began to feel like something else entirely. And when the truth finally came out, it left even the most seasoned detectives shaken. A son, orchestrating the death of the mother who gave him everything. Not for vengeance, not for survival, but for fame and fast money, and he nearly got away with it. Yolanda Holmes was born and raised in Chicago. She knew hardship early, growing up on the West Side, surrounded by struggle but grounded by family. When her son Carmaine was born in 1989, everything changed. She poured herself into motherhood, took a job, then another, then opened her own salon on the North Side. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Clients came for the cuts, stayed for the conversations. Some said being in her chair felt like therapy. But behind the steady smile, she carried a lot on her shoulders. Carmaine was her only child. She raised him alone, gave him what she never had: shoes, clothes, and attention. But as he got older, something started to change. He stopped calling her mom, started calling her Yolanda, started flashing money online, talking big, rapping louder. She didn't always understand his world, but she kept supporting him. "I'm gonna be famous, Ma. You'll see. Everybody's gonna know my name." Online, he called himself Young QC, but there was no record deal, no concerts, just rented cars, stacks of cash, and a handful of followers. Yolanda tried to be patient, but friends said she was worried about his temper, his obsession with attention, the company he kept. She confided in co-workers after long shifts. Sometimes she'd just shake her head and say, "That boy don't listen to me no more." In the summer of 2012, something changed. Carmaine began asking about her finances, insisting she make him the sole beneficiary of her bank accounts, telling her he needed control for business reasons. "What if something happens to you? You got to think ahead." Yolanda agreed, maybe reluctantly, maybe just wanting peace, but it would be a fatal mistake. What she didn't know was that he had already begun planning. Quietly, carefully, in the weeks before her death, Carmaine contacted a man named Eugene Spencer, a low-level associate, a man with a gun. The deal was simple: break in, kill her, and get paid. He said, "Make sure my mama dead." That's what he told me. September 2nd, 2012, the night before Labor Day. Yolanda was home alone, getting ready for bed. The apartment was calm, quiet, ordinary. At 4:35 a.m., Eugene Spencer was buzzed into the building. The door wasn't locked. He made his way up the stairs. In his pocket was a gun. In his mind was a promise. What happened next took less than 60 seconds. 2 shots to the head, 1 to the chest. Yolanda never had time to scream. Spencer ran out the way he came, down the stairs, into a car driven by Carmaine's girlfriend, Loriana Johnson. They didn't say a word. Chicago police arrived within the hour. No signs of forced entry, no known enemies, and no immediate suspects. It looked clean, professional, like someone had studied her routine. It wasn't until they pulled her phone records that the cracks began to show. Within 48 hours, Carmaine emptied Yolanda's accounts. He withdrew thousands, bought designer clothes, got a new car. Then he posted a video, smiling, laughing, throwing cash into a crowd, shouting, "This is for my fans. My mom would want this." Detectives were watching, and they started asking questions. 3 months later, he was arrested, along with the gunman and the getaway driver. The case that began with a mother's death had now become something no one expected, a son at the center of it all. At first, Carmaine appeared to be just another grieving son. He posted tributes online, said he was heartbroken, said he'd give anything to have her back. But police noticed something off. He cried for the cameras, but behind closed doors, he wasn't asking about the investigation. He wasn't calling for updates. And according to Yolanda's friends, he wasn't showing up for her funeral planning either. Detectives brought him in for questioning. He was calm, almost rehearsed. He said he'd been asleep during the time of the murder, said he didn't hear anything, that he and his mom were close. But then came the first contradiction. When asked how the killer got in, he said the door was always locked. Except it wasn't. "You're telling me you don't know how someone got into a secured building, but also that your mom always left the door open." It didn't make sense. Then the family started talking. Yolanda's cousin told police she was worried weeks before her death, that something about Carmaine had changed. She said, "If something ever happens to me, it's going to be my son." I told her not to say that, but she said it like she meant it. Police wrote it down. That was the first real turning point. They pulled Main's phone records. It was all there. Dozens of calls. Late-night texts. Including one, the night Yolanda was killed. 4:57 a.m., Spencer to Main. Done. But when police opened his laptop, everything changed. What they found wasn't just disturbing. It was chilling. Search history, payout calculations, lyrics about death and revenge. But one folder was different. Inside were photos of Yolanda, sleeping, sitting on the couch, eating dinner, taken from distance, unaware, tracked. When confronted, he barely reacted. He said they were for a tribute project, that he was documenting his mom's last year alive. But she didn't know she was dying. Did she call Maine? No answer. In the days after Yolanda's death, Maine didn't just grieve. He capitalized. He posted video after video of himself throwing cash into crowds, renting luxury cars, calling himself the realest rapper in Chicago. And every single dollar came from her life insurance policy. Forensic psychologists were called in. They looked at his behavior, past history, online footprint. Just ego, an overwhelming hunger for validation. It wasn't just about money. He wanted to be someone, to be seen. And when the fame didn't come fast enough, he took matters into his own hands. Former friends said he always exaggerated, made up stories about being in the music industry, talked about his haters trying to stop his rise. He started saying things like, "If my mom dies, I'll be rich. Real kings don't answer to no woman." Friend quote, "I thought he was just talking crazy. Didn't think he meant it." But when detectives listened to the jail phone recordings, they realized he wasn't finished. Even from behind bars, Maine was plotting. He called Loriana, told her to delete things, told another friend to hide a second phone, tried to shift blame, claimed Spencer acted alone, that he was framed. But every call was recorded, every lie added to the case. By the time the trial started in 2019, prosecutors had what they needed: money trail, call logs, surveillance, a full conspiracy. The defense argued he was misunderstood, that Spencer acted on his own, but no one believed it. The jury left the room. The court fell silent, and Yolanda's family waited for justice. It was the early hours of August 23rd. South Side, Chicago. The city asleep, but inside one apartment, footsteps echoed on linoleum floors. The key had been stolen. The lights were off. The killer already inside. Yolanda Holmes was asleep in her bed, her satin scarf still wrapped around her head, her phone charging at the nightstand. She never saw it coming. Prosecutors would later describe it in chilling detail. Eugene Spencer, then just 22, walked into the bedroom, gun in hand. Maine had told him, quote, "Make sure she don't make it." She woke up, just long enough to scream. Then a flash of light. One shot. Yolanda staggered, already bleeding, and fell off the side of the bed. Spencer moved fast. He beat her. He stabbed her. Again and again. Blood soaked the sheets. Her lamp knocked to the floor. The last thing she saw may have been her own son's sneakers, left in the doorway. Detectives said the scene looked personal. This wasn't just a hit. It was an execution done with emotion. The killer didn't flee right away. He walked through the apartment, took her keys, rummaged through drawers. Maine had instructed him to take her car too. The BMW parked outside. What police uncovered next stunned everyone in the courtroom. Maine hadn't stayed home like he claimed. He was parked nearby, waiting. The phone call came in at 4:57 a.m. Spencer's voice. "It's done." Maine replied with a single word. "Bet." Later that morning, a family member grew concerned. Yolanda wasn't answering. Her phone went to voicemail. They arrived at the complex, and what they found shattered them. Blood, silence, her body on the floor. The woman who raised her son alone was gone. She was just 45 years old. Detectives worked quickly. The signs pointed to a forced entry at first, but nothing was taken. No signs of robbery, just a clean, brutal attack. And then came the moment that cracked the case open. A neighbor's security camera. It showed Spencer walking up the sidewalk, minutes before the gunshot, and Maine texting just seconds after. They traced the weapon back to Spencer. Fingerprints on the doorknob, Shoe prints matching a pair found in Colmane's closet. Phone pings confirmed it. Spencer was in the apartment at the time of the murder. Colmane was less than a block away. He never lifted a finger, but he didn't have to. In January 2020, the verdict came down. Guilty of first-degree murder, of conspiracy to commit murder, of hiring a hitman to kill his own mother. He showed no emotion, no apology, no words. The courtroom didn't erupt. It just broke, like the silence Yolanda left behind. Yolanda Holmes was buried just 4 days after a murder. Her children wept. Her mother barely spoke. Friends stared in stunned silence. But Colmane Wilson didn't grieve. He performed. The day after she died, he uploaded a video to YouTube, a freestyle rap filmed in a luxury car. In the lyrics, references to betrayal, loyalty, revenge. That same week, he emptied her bank accounts. In court, the evidence left little doubt. But what shocked the jury wasn't the how. It was the why. Colmane had his mother listed as the primary on a $90,000 life insurance policy. Prosecutors alleged the motive was simple. He wanted her gone, so he could cash in, so he could become a rap god. I love my mother, but we had issues. She wouldn't let me live how I wanted. She was controlling. The defense tried to claim emotional abuse. They painted Yolanda as overbearing, but the jury didn't buy it. The texts were damning. Colmane, handle that tonight. Spencer, she gonna scream? Colmane, just make sure she gone. Yolanda's mother took the stand, her voice trembling. She wasn't perfect, but she loved him. She gave up her whole life for that boy, and he took hers like it was nothing. The public reaction was intense. In local media, Colmane was vilified, but online some fans still defended him. Some said it was fake news. Others said she must have done something to deserve it. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, there were still those who refused to believe his son could do something like this. Eugene Spencer pled guilty and testified against Colmane. He said he was promised money. He said Colmane made it sound like business. He broke down when the 911 call played. Yolanda's last breaths, her final screams. For some, Spencer was just a pawn. For others, a willing weapon. But no one argued about Colmane. He orchestrated it. He watched it unfold. And then he flaunted the money. January 31st, 2020. Sentencing day. The judge looked Colmane in the eye and called him, quote, cold, calculated, depraved. He was sentenced to 99 years in prison. Eugene Spencer received 100. You planned her death like a business transaction, but that woman raised you. And in the end, you took the one life that gave you yours. The apartment Yolanda once lived in now stands empty. Her business closed. Her memory left behind in photos and police records. Her 2 children now live with relatives. Her daughter still refuses to say his name. The hardest part for the family? Not just the murder, but the betrayal. The questions that will never have answers. Was this always in him, or did something in him break? Narrator, low and final. How does a son become the killer of his own mother? Was it greed? Was it ego? Or was it something deeper? Something too broken to ever be understood? In the end, the money didn't matter. The music stopped. The cameras cut. And Colmane Wilson, young QC, was no longer the star of the story. He was the villain. She raised him on her own, built a life from nothing, shielded him from the streets, paid for studio time when no one believed in his dream. And he thanked her with a bullet, with silence, with a plan so cold, even his accomplice would later say, it felt like I was erasing a stranger. In the weeks after her death, detectives found something buried in Yolanda's iCloud backup, something they didn't expect. A draft message, never sent, just 4 words typed into the phone's notes app. He's not my son. Was it a metaphor, a figure of speech, or something else? Detectives never found a clear explanation, but in her final days, friends said she had been distant, paranoid, as if she sensed something was wrong. Did she know what was coming? Did she fear him before the night he took her life? The answer may never be clear, and maybe that's what makes this case linger. He chased fame. He bought followers. He flaunted wealth that wasn't his. But in the end, All that's left is a story we still don't fully understand. A mother lost, a son in chains, and a nation watching, still trying to make sense of it. Was this the act of a calculating monster, or a young man poisoned by the illusion of celebrity? And if money and fame were the prize, was it worth her life? A mother loved him, a community trusted him, and he threw it all away for an image, a track, and a dollar amount. Now he sits in a concrete cell. No mic, no crowd, just the echo of what he did. You've heard the story, you've seen the facts, but the truth, that's for you to decide. Do you think Comaine Wilson always planned it? Or did something inside him finally break? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you know someone chasing the wrong kind of fame, share this story with them. Because some lights shine just long enough to destroy everything around them. He had the world at his feet, but that wasn't enough. Not for him, and not for the darkness inside. This wasn't just murder. This was betrayal in its most chilling form. Do you think Comaine Wilson always planned it? Or did something inside him finally break? This story left more questions than answers. If it struck a nerve, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more true crime that hits this deep, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell.
Was having an inappropriate sexual relationship with his underage niece.
It was a Wednesday, December 19th, 2018, the last week of school before Christmas break. Teenagers at Terry Parker High School in Jacksonville were thinking about holiday parties, last-minute assignments, and winter freedom. Except one girl is thinking about something else entirely. Iana Sawyer, 16 years old, 5 months pregnant, and still showing up every morning with her books, her backpack, and that quiet determination she always carried. She didn't complain. She didn't cry for help. She didn't act like she was afraid. But maybe she was. That day, Iana left class early, just after 11 a.m. A surveillance camera captured her walking out of the school building alone. She told the front office she had a family appointment, said her uncle was picking her up. That same uncle whom she had always called trustworthy. The one her mom had always warned her to respect. The one everyone believed had her best interest at heart. But Iana never came back. She never returned to school. She never made a home. She never sent another text message. And no one saw her again. At first, people assumed she ran away. After all, she was pregnant. Maybe she cracked under the pressure. Maybe she got scared. That's what they thought. That's what he wanted them to think. But soon, investigators would discover a much darker truth. A truth buried under layers of silence, family trust, and a horrific secret no child should ever carry. What happened to Iana didn't begin that morning. It didn't start at the school gates, or even when she got in the car with her uncle. It began long before, behind closed doors, in places where no one was looking, in moments where no one was listening. And by the time the truth surfaced, Iana was already gone. This is not just the story of a missing girl. It's not just the story of a murder. It's the story of how trust can be weaponized, how silence can protect a predator, and how a family's darkest betrayal was hiding in plain sight. It began as a routine school day, but by nightfall, something was wrong. Iana Sawyer had not come home. Her phone was off. Her social media, silent. Her last seen location, the front office at Terry Parker High School. She'd signed out early for a family emergency. That emergency didn't exist. Her uncle, 33-year-old Jonathan Quiles, was the one she was reportedly meeting. But when police questioned him, his story kept changing. He claimed he didn't see Iana that day. Then he said maybe she came by the salvage yard briefly. Then he wasn't sure. It didn't take long for inconsistencies to pile up. Family members gave vague or conflicting timelines. No one seemed to know why Iana had left school. No one, not even her mother, had heard from her since 11 a.m.
Man, I have no idea. This is not like, this is out of character for her. And for me to call you all, something's wrong.
Surveillance footage confirmed she'd left alone, walking calmly toward the pickup area. The only known destination, Jonathan's auto shop, the same one he'd worked at for years. The same one where he claimed to be all day, alone. And then, one chilling detail changed everything. A confidential family source told detectives. Iana was pregnant, 16 years old, 5 months along, quiet, reserved, and not dating anyone. That detail turned an already tragic missing person case into something far more disturbing. The father of the unborn baby wasn't a teenage boyfriend, wasn't a stranger. It was her uncle, Jonathan Keyless, her legal guardian during the week, a man she was supposed to trust. That one revelation cracked the case wide open, not just because of who he was, but because it revealed what he was hiding. Now, it wasn't just about where Iana went. It was about why she had to disappear. Detectives now had to answer a question far more chilling than where is Iana? They needed to know, what had he done to her? And how long had this gone unnoticed? Once the paternity of the baby was confirmed, detectives brought Jonathan Keyless in for formal questioning. The interviews were unsettling. Keyless showed no panic, no concern, and more importantly, no remorse. He denied any involvement in Iana's disappearance at first, but when presented with cell tower data, security footage, and most damning of all, the DNA confirmation, his story crumbled. According to statements made by Keyless' own brother, Joseph Keyless, Jonathan confessed to the killing. He allegedly told him that he'd shot Iana in the head, that he'd placed her body in a dumpster, that the dumpster was picked up by a waste company and sent to the Otis Road landfill. That admission triggered a massive search operation at the landfill. A grim, nearly impossible mission. 5,300 acres of trash compressed and layered. But no trace of Iana was ever recovered. Her body, to this day, has never been found. Despite the lack of a body, investigators built their case. And in the most damning moment of trial testimony, his own family took the stand against him. Joseph Keyless told the courtroom, "He looked me in the eye and said, I had to get rid of her. She was going to ruin everything." When pressed further in interviews, Keyless admitted to having sexual contact with Iana. He spoke with chilling detachment, as if none of it mattered. For Iana's family, the betrayal was overwhelming. This wasn't just a crime of violence. It was a crime of control, a systematic abuse of power, a predator embedded in the family, trusted, respected, even loved. He destroyed a young girl's life and her future to protect his secret. But it didn't work. In the face of mounting evidence, the court found him guilty on all counts. The sentence, 3 consecutive life terms without parole. But for those who loved Iana, the justice system could only go so far, because there's still no grave, no body, only a question that still haunts this case to this day. Where is Iana Sawyer? It was more than a trial. It was a reckoning. By the time Jonathan Keyless entered a Jacksonville courtroom in early 2020, the community already knew his name, but they didn't know the depth of what he had done. The courtroom was tense. Iana's mother sat front row, clutching a framed photo of her daughter in a white dress. Her eyes swollen from sleepless nights, her hands trembling as testimony began. There was no body, no physical remains, but the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors built their case brick by brick. DNA proof that Keyless was the father of Iana's unborn child. Phone records placing him at the auto yard, the last known location of Iana. Surveillance footage of Iana leaving school and vanishing into thin air. Witnesses recounting strange behavior, inappropriate touches, and late-night texts. His own brother's testimony, claiming Keyless had confessed to killing her and disposing of her body in a dumpster. One line from that testimony silenced the room. He said he did it because she was going to tell her mother, and he couldn't let that happen. Inside the courtroom, every detail felt heavier than the last. But it was when detectives took the stand, recounting what they'd heard from Keyless himself, that the atmosphere changed. He admitted to sexual contact with Iana. He acknowledged the pregnancy, but he denied killing her. The contradictions only deepened. And then, in a moment that drew audible gasps from the gallery, the prosecution played a chilling excerpt from a recorded jailhouse phone call. Keyless, laughing with a relative, said, "They can't prove nothing without a body. Cold, calculated, smug, as if the absence of her body erased the truth." But it didn't, because Iana's presence, even in her absence, was undeniable. Her text messages, her voice notes, her friends who testified about how withdrawn she became in those final weeks, her school counselor who revealed Iana had once whispered, "I'm scared to go home sometimes." The prosecution rested its case with one haunting question. What kind of monster murders his own niece just to silence her? The jury deliberated for less than a day, and when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the sentence, life in prison, without the possibility of parole. No emotion crossed his face, just a blank stare, as if he still believed he'd outsmarted everyone. But outside the courtroom, it was a different story. The case exploded across Florida and beyond. Headlines screamed, "Body still missing, family demands answers." Child sexual abuse ignored until too late. On social media, hashtags trended. Hashtag justice for Iana. Hashtag protect our girls. Parents began demanding more school counselor screenings. Nonprofits launched awareness campaigns around incestuous abuse, a topic often shrouded in silence. Survivors came forward. Stories surfaced from across the country of young girls silenced by relatives, shamed into secrecy, ignored by systems meant to protect them. And in Jacksonville, something shifted. A local journalist summed it up best. This wasn't just the murder of a girl. This was the system failing her every step of the way. Iana's school came under scrutiny for allowing her to leave early that day. Questions were raised about how a 16-year-old, visibly pregnant, managed to keep that pregnancy secret from teachers, doctors, even family friends. The community, once close-knit and quiet, erupted with grief and guilt. And as candles burned on her vigil site outside Terry Parker High, people whispered the same line over and over. How didn't we see this coming? For her family, the pain was unrelenting. Her mother told reporters, "I don't get to bury my baby. I don't get to say goodbye. You took that from me too." But she also said something else, something powerful. "My daughter's voice was stolen, but it's our job now to make sure it's heard." Where's Iana? Even after the trial ended, even after the sentence was handed down, the nightmare didn't stop. Iana Sawyer was gone. Her body never found. Her voice silenced in ways too painful to comprehend. For her family, justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, inch by inch, through a grief that had no shape, no end. Her mother, heartbroken and hollowed out, would later say, "He didn't just take her from us. He took our ability to lay her to rest, to hug her one last time, to say goodbye." Each day became a ritual of remembering. Watching old home videos, listening to saved voicemails, touching clothes left untouched in her closet. Her siblings struggled in silence, some turning inward, some lashing out. One of her brothers stopped going to school altogether. The family home, once filled with laughter, became a place of stillness, haunted not by ghosts, but by what could never be spoken. Every birthday, every Christmas, every passing school bus, a reminder of the future Iana never got to live. But they weren't alone. The community rallied in ways no one expected. Within days of the trial's conclusion, a vigil was organized outside Terry Parker High School, where Iana had last been seen. Hundreds showed up. Some knew her personally. Many didn't. They came with candles, hand-painted signs, and tear-streaked faces. A choir of classmates sang Amazing Grace. Her best friend read a poem Iana once wrote in English class about wanting to travel the world, to become a nurse, to help children. One line from that poem has since been etched into a mural near the school gates. "I want to help others feel safe in their skin because I didn't always feel safe in mine." The school eventually installed a memorial bench in her name. A pink ribbon was painted on the back, Iana's favorite color. But beneath the gestures, the grief lingered. And with it came questions. Tough ones. How could this happen? How did no one notice the signs? Who failed her? In the months following the verdict, Iana's case became a flashpoint in Florida's legal and social justice circles. Lawmakers faced pressure from activists, parents, and child welfare advocates demanding change. How are familial abusers slipping through the cracks? Why isn't there mandated reporting for unusual behavior between minors and relatives? How many other Iyanas are suffering in silence, under the same roof as their abuser? In response, a state-level task force was formed, dedicated to re-evaluating how schools and child protection agencies handle reports of suspected intrafamily abuse. One reform proposed, but reforms weren't enough for many, because no matter how many bills passed, Iyana was still gone, and Jonathan Quiles, the man who had shared family dinners, posed in Christmas photos, and once helped Iyana with homework, had destroyed everything from within. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a shadowy figure hiding in the dark. He was family, and that, above all else, was the hardest truth to live with. I still wait for her to walk into class. She was the one who always made you laugh, even when things were bad. We didn't know. We just didn't know what she was going through. Teachers, classmates, neighbors, each of them haunted by missed signs. Guilt, regret, a silent, shared sense of failure. The family, in their own time, turned pain into advocacy. Iyana's mother began speaking at high schools and local youth centers. She founded the Iyana Sawyer Foundation, focused on supporting victims of sexual abuse within families. The foundation's message was blunt, unflinching. Monsters don't always come from outside the home. And on the anniversary of her disappearance each year, a community walk is held in her name. They carry signs, wear pink, and release lanterns into the sky. But even amid all that light, the darkness of what happened to Iyana never truly fades. Because there's still no body, no burial, no resting place. Just a missing girl, a broken family, and a question that lingers unanswered. Where's Iyana? Jonathan Quiles was convicted, sentenced to life, locked away forever. But that wasn't the end of the story. In many ways, it was just the beginning. Because the questions didn't stop with a guilty verdict. In court, Quiles claimed he had no idea where Iyana's body was. But detectives believed otherwise. And they still do. Months of searches, dozens of leads, and even cadaver dogs led investigators to a landfill in Georgia, where they spent weeks combing through debris, hoping for a trace of her remains. But they found nothing. Not a hair, not a bone, nothing. And to this day, Iyana Sawyer's body has never been recovered, which means her family, even after years, has never been able to lay her to rest. There's no grave to visit, no stone to etch her name into, only memory. And that memory, bright, innocent, trusting, stands in unbearable contrast to the truth that her killer was someone she called family, someone she had once hugged on Christmas morning, someone who didn't just take her life, but tried to erase every trace of it. After all, Iyana was pregnant at just 16, and not one teacher, not one friend, not one adult noticed something was wrong. Had anyone reported an uneasy feeling? Had she tried to tell someone, only to be ignored? Or was it fear, shame, loyalty? We may never know. But what we do know is that this wasn't just a crime of violence. It was a crime of trust. And that's what makes it so much harder to see coming. So monsters don't hide in shadows. They sit at the dinner table. They smile in family photos. They tell you they love you right before they take everything. And until Iyana is found, until the full truth comes to light, one question will hang in the air. Where is she? If this story moved you, consider sharing Iyana's name, because her story is not just about justice. It's about prevention, and about the children still living in fear behind closed doors with no one listening. But this wasn't the only case where family became the threat. Sawyer's story should have never ended this way. She was young, bright, full of promise, and she trusted the person who took everything from her. If this story made you pause, made you angry, or made you think, don't let it end here. Backhand index pointing right, share her name. Talk about the warning signs. Break the silence. Because silence protects predators, and awareness saves lives. Speech balloon, drop a comment. What do you think could have saved Iyana? Bell subscribe for more real stories that demand justice. February 22nd, 2025, 11:16 p.m. Princeton, New Jersey, one of America's safest communities, home to an Ivy League university, where violent crime is virtually unheard of. In the past 40 years, this prestigious town has witnessed only 4 homicides. But on this cold winter night, something would shatter that peaceful reputation forever. Asterisk. The 911 call came in as a report of fire. Matthew Herkin, 31 years old, former star athlete, graduate of Wesleyan University, was on the line. His voice carried an eerie calmness that would later haunt investigators. "There's a fire," he told the dispatcher, "and my brother's dead body." When pressed for details about how his brother had been injured, Matthew's response sent chills through the emergency operator. What police discovered when they arrived at the Michelle Muse apartments would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Princeton's history. Inside apartment unit 12, they found 26-year-old Joseph Herkin, a promising young man who had been recruited to play soccer at the University of Michigan. But this wasn't just a murder. This was something far more horrific. Joseph's body bore injuries so severe that seasoned investigators struggled to process what they were seeing. His head had been bludgeoned. His chest and upper body showed signs of a vicious attack. Most shocking of all, one of his eyes was missing completely. Asterisk. But the horror didn't end there. Scattered throughout the apartment, investigators found blood-smeared utensils, a plate covered in gore, and a cup filled with blood. On an ottoman in the living room sat the burned remains of the family cat, partially consumed by flames. The apartment reeked of violence and death. Standing amid this carnage was Matthew Herkin himself, cuts covering his hands, blood under his fingernails. When investigators asked what had happened, his response would become the most chilling statement in Princeton's criminal history. "I went into a fit of madness, maybe like 40 minutes ago." Asterisk. This is the story of 2 brothers who once stood side by side as star athletes, who shared dreams and a promising future. One would become a victim of unimaginable brutality. The other would become his killer. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect family, something darker had been growing for years. A mental deterioration so severe that it would transform love into violence, brother into monster, and a quiet Saturday night into a scene of unspeakable horror. Asterisk. What you're about to hear is not just a story of murder. It's a story of mental illness, family tragedy, and a terrifying moment when reality became indistinguishable from nightmare. This is the case that would force an entire community to confront the darkest corners of the human mind. Welcome to the Princeton Brothers murder, a case that proves sometimes the most dangerous threats come from those closest to us. This is Princeton, New Jersey, home to one of America's most prestigious universities and typically one of the safest communities in the state. But on a cold February night in 2025, this quiet town would become the backdrop for a family tragedy that shocked everyone who knew the Herkin brothers. But what could drive a brother to commit such a horrific act? What terrifying visions haunted Matthew Herkin? And why did their surviving brother send a warning text just 1 hour before the murder? Our story begins on a Saturday afternoon when Matthew's surviving brother picked him up at 4:30 p.m., concerned about his deteriorating mental state. Matthew was experiencing what his brother described as terrifying visions and was extremely distressed and despondent. 4:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. The brothers went to the grocery store and then to the surviving brother's residence, where they remained until approximately 10 p.m. It was a desperate attempt to help Matthew through his mental health crisis. The surviving brother drove Matthew back to his residence, where he saw Joseph Herkin, the victim. After a brief discussion, the surviving brother left and returned to his apartment. Approximately 1 hour before the murder, the surviving brother sent Joseph a text warning him that Matthew was struggling with his visions and to contact him if he needed help. Joseph responded, "Will do." Think about this. If you received a warning text like that about your brother's mental state, what would you do? Would you leave the apartment? Would you call for help? Share your thoughts in the comments. 10:30 p.m. Just 45 minutes before Matthew would call 911, his surviving brother texted him, inviting him to go on a hike the next day. "Hang in there," the older brother texted. 11:16 p.m. The 911 call ***. At 11:16 p.m., police responded to a 911 call from Matthew reporting a fire and his brother's dead body at the Michelle Muse Apartments complex. When a dispatcher asked Matthew how his brother was injured, he said, "I'm not going to go into any more details right now." 11:20 p.m., police arrived and found Matthew in the residence along with his brother's body, which had significant injuries to the head, including a missing eye, as well as injuries to Joseph's chest and upper body. But investigators found something that changed everything. They also found a cup of blood with blood-smeared utensils and a plate. Investigators further discovered a deceased cat on an ottoman that appeared partially burned. Matthew is accused of murdering his brother with a knife and golf club. While interviewing Matthew, who apparently had cuts on his hands, he reportedly told police he went into a fit of madness, maybe like 40 minutes ago. Matthew had suffered from severe mental illness for the past 5 years, according to his surviving brother's statement to police. The suspect had shared some disturbing, graphic poetry to his Facebook profile in September and May 2024. Matthew Herkin is accused of murdering his 26-year-old brother, Joseph Herkin, in the family's Princeton apartment, allegedly with a knife and golf club. He is also charged with animal cruelty related to the death of a cat. Herkin appeared in court Thursday morning for a detention hearing. However, during Thursday's hearing, no evidence was presented because Herkin consented to pretrial detention. None of Herkin's family members were in court on Thursday. Matthew Herkin, the Princeton, New Jersey man known as a star student in high school who is now accused of killing his brother, likely had a mental breakdown. An expert said, "If I was the defense attorney, I wouldn't fight it. I would say, you know what? We think there's a mental issue." Legal experts believe the savage timeline in Princeton preppy murder could bolster insanity defense for suspect brother. Remember when I mentioned Matthew's fit of madness? This statement could be crucial to his defense. Joseph Herkin was pronounced dead at the scene, and his autopsy results are pending. Local and state officials are investigating the 26-year-old's death as a homicide. Police seek to unlock devices in Princeton brother murder case as investigators work to piece together the full timeline of events. Matthew Herkin has been in custody since his arrest on February 22nd, after allegedly attacking and killing Joseph Herkin in the family's Princeton residence. Matthew Herkin, who is being represented by the public defender's office despite his family's luxury living, appeared before Superior Court Judge Amber Gibbs and consented to being detained before trial. He has a probable cause hearing scheduled for May 9th. David Herkin, Deborah Herkin, and David Herkin Jr. attend the funeral for Joseph Herkin at St. Luke Roman Catholic Church on Saturday, March 1st, 2025, in Toms River, New Jersey. Joseph and Matthew Herkin were star soccer players in high school and college. They were both athletes at Toms River High School, and Matthew went on to study at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. Joseph Herkin was recruited to play soccer at the University of Michigan. In the past 40 years, there have been at least 4 other reported homicides in Princeton in 1986, 1987, 2010, and 2021. This rare act of violence shocked the typically peaceful Princeton community. This case highlights the devastating impact of untreated mental illness. Matthew had suffered from severe mental illness for the past 5 years, according to family members. The surviving brother explained that when he spoke to Matthew earlier that day, Matthew was extremely distressed, despondent, and experiencing terrifying visions. Gelman also said he would request a mental health evaluation for the suspect. Prosecutors prep indictment as they build their case against Matthew Herkin. This case will test New Jersey's approach to mental health defenses in violent crimes. The question isn't whether Matthew committed the act. He was found at the scene and made incriminating statements. The question is whether he was legally responsible for his actions. Joseph Herkin was just 26 years old, a promising athlete whose life was cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. His family now faces the double tragedy of losing one son while another faces life in prison. Herkin has been in custody since his arrest on February 22nd, accused of killing 26-year-old Joseph, and will remain detained as the case moves forward. The Hurkin brothers' story is a devastating reminder that mental illness can destroy families in the most unimaginable ways. Two-star athletes from a loving family, one now dead, the other facing life in prison for his murder. This case forces us to confront difficult questions about mental health, family responsibility, and the justice system's role in handling defendants with severe mental illness. Princeton remains one of the safest areas in New Jersey, but this tragedy has left lasting scars on a community that knew both brothers as promising young athletes. What's your take on this case? Should mental illness be considered a mitigating factor in violent crimes? How can families better support members struggling with mental health issues? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this case as tragic and complex as I did, please subscribe to True Crime Chronicles. We examine the most compelling cases while treating victims and their families with the respect they deserve. For more cases involving family violence and mental health, check out our playlist linked in the description. This case is still developing, and we'll continue to follow Matthew Hurkin's legal proceedings. Until next time,